time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time.
Welcome, everybody. It is Monday. That's right. It's not Thursday. We have a special tea time tonight. We have returning guest Marklyn T. Johnson in the house, and he's going to be talking about his new book, I Like Black People, the Good Ones. It is an amazing book. I read it this afternoon, and we're going to get really deep into it. We're going to really break it apart today. We're going to see all the different chapters and all of that as well. And we're going to get some updates from Marklyn since he's been on Tea Time because he's a returning guest. So if you haven't subscribed to Miss Liz's YouTube channel, run over there, ring that little doorbell, and subscribe to Miss Liz's YouTube. You can watch these Tea Times at any time in your home, at work, driving, at a family picnic. You can listen to these Tea Times whenever you're ready to. So disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live shows. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forth in good faith. However, may bring forth dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and we'll see you at a later date for a later show. And again, all Tea Time shows are done on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Unless you see a Tea Time on Monday and Tuesday, it's a rescheduled Tea Time or a surprise Tea Time or a special Tea Time like we're doing tonight. So a little bit on Marklyn, and then I'm going to get Marklyn in here, and we're going to spill about this amazing book that he wrote, because it really opened my eyes up, and it made me step back. And being a grandma of a Black grandson, it really made me open my eyes to a lot of things that I need to improve as well. So we'll get into that a little bit. Marklyn T. Johnson was born and raised in central New Jersey and is a graduate of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Marklyn has worked in production industries for over 20 years, speaking everywhere from school, churches, and other live events. Growing up, Marklyn's idolized many different men, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Michael Jackson, Eddie Murphy, Michael Jordan, and Tupac Shakur. I hope I'm saying it right. I'll get him to say it. All of these figures inspired Marklyn to follow his dreams, embrace his passions, and speak his mind. By far, however, Marklyn's greatest idol was his father, Willie. Marklyn's father was a very strict man due to his own struggles in life that many men of color, African Americans, must unfortunately deal with. When he looked back on his life, Marklyn regrets ignoring the life lessons his father taught him. However, when he thinks about the man he became today, the way he tells it like it is, the way he tries to lift others up, and his willingness to help others, he is reminded that he is a walking example of his father's teaching. For Marklyn's full bio, you can go over to Miss Liz's Facebook page. I want to get Marklyn in here, and I really want to get this conversation going. So again, grab your tea, grab your coffee. If you have any comments or questions, put them in the section. If you'd like to DM Miss Liz privately, you can do that, and I'll get those out to Marklyn as well. So let me get Marklyn in here, and we'll have a good old tea. And tonight's tea, we're doing truth and empathic and accountable. So let me get Marklyn in here. Welcome, Marklyn.
What up? What up? It's so good to be back here. How you doing?
I am good. My tongue is a little twisted more than usual because I'm starting to have a little bit of issues with my speech and that. But you know, we talked about that before we went live, right? Life, the roller coaster, up and down. So So I want to get into this, Marklyn, with you, but I want to take people back if they haven't seen the first show with you. So let us know a little bit on who you were as a little guy and who you are now.
Oh, wow. Marklyn T. Johnson, Marklyn Mr. Direct Johnson. So no longer use the T. The T is for training. The T is for terrible. The T is for truth. There's a lot of stuff. I'm a big personality, which is weird because I used to be a very shy kid, and that throws people off. My aunt used to tell a story about I used to be glued to my mom's like side, and I wouldn't leave her side. And now when I tell that to people, you're like, "What? Where did that happen?" Born and raised in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. For any of you watching, big ups to Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're watching. Lived at home till I was 32 years old. Was a bum. Didn't want to do anything with my life. Didn't know what to do. Graduated high school with no direction. Graduated high school with no idea of what I wanted to be. And then finally I went to computer school because computers ain't going nowhere. So what else are you going to do? Then from there, I ended up moving to Minnesota. And I will tell you, if you're lost in life, if you don't know what's going on, change your atmosphere. You'll figure it out, because what's instinctual will always take place. And I'm a Jersey boy, 32 years. So when I moved to Minnesota in 2005, I wasn't better than anybody else, but at 32, you're kind of ingrained in who you are personality wise, which is why they tell people they should leave at an early age, because you could figure out more so where you fit in at an early age. But once you're in your 30s, you're kind of set in stone who you are. And then you got to kind of morph and change. And it's never too late, but sometimes the struggle is a little bit harder than you want it to be. So thank God I moved. And when I was there, I discovered my love of wanting to be on stage and use my voice for something different. And it's one of the things I do. I'm a comic. I'm a stand-up comic. I go on stages and I make people laugh. And another thing I do is I motivational speak. And it's funny I'm doing this. I just had a story about something that happened in a school, which pertains to my book. So we'll talk about it a little bit later. But when you figure out who you are later on in life, and who I am right now is not who I was 5 years ago. It's not who I was 10 years ago. I'm still on the evolution of a journey trying to figure out who I am and what I'm meant to be. But I'm getting there, and I kind of know I kind of know where I'm going. Thank God for small blessings.
Well, and Marklyn, before we get into the book that you just released, because this is a new book, you also have a couple of previous books that we talked about the first time you were on the show. So do you want to talk a little bit about those, and then we'll jump into your new book?
Sure, I'll do that because I happen to have them here because I'm a shameless plug guy. The first book I ever wrote right here is called Lessons from a Shit Talker. It was a motivational book. Basically, what I have to do to follow my dreams, what do I have to do in order to become the man that I want to be, in order to become who I'm looking forward to being, the process, the grind, the hustle, which I'm still doing to this day. So this book is not just like, hey, I did it. This book is an ongoing storytelling about what you do, the process, the things you go through. One of the chapters that stand out to me is goals. Go out and learn something. And that's what people don't realize. Like sometimes people are so scared to learn a new, they want to do something, but they don't want to learn the skill set that goes along with it. I'm self-taught when it comes to video production. Everything that you see everybody doing, it's turnkey. Everybody now has turnkey stuff. I taught myself how to do video. I taught myself how to create podcasts. I taught myself how to do everything. I even taught myself how to do stand-up comedy, which then I had to take a course on it. But you're learning. Go out and learn something. Do not think you have all the keys to what you need. So that was that book. Then a lot of people didn't believe some of the conversations I was having online. So I wrote a book called Facebook Conversations, The Good, the Funny, the Ugly. Now that book, which throws a lot of people off when they read it, it's a tough read. The reason why it's a tough read is you get to read the subjects as I've put them out there. And, this almost is a capture in time because most of these conversations are not recent. They're mostly old conversation, which is funny. I asked the young lady to help me, and she said, well, I need to read your books before I can help you. I'm like, no, you don't. But if you want to, go ahead. And she reads the second book and says how I was opening myself to litigations and the book was so mean. And this is a point I want to make to you. Part of the third book that I wrote, I Like Black People, the good ones. It's about how you have to be able to have a conversation to learn. How she had these conversations, she would have known that these conversations were like 8-9 years ago. None of them were recent. They were stuck in time, but she wanted to believe that they're now. And she said all types of awful things to me, which is fine. You are who you are. I wish everybody the best of luck in life. Life is too torturous for me to worry about being mean to people. But, my books are about reality, the reality we live in. And, I think a lot of people live in an alternate, they like to think that they live in a certain world, but they don't accept the world that they really live in. And the world we live in is really weird.
It is. It really is. When I first started reading today's book, I like, I love Black People, the good ones. When I read the title, I was like, okay, what's he mean by the good ones? So even before I opened the book, I was like, what's the good ones? Like, what am I getting in here? Like, is there going to be like stories about bad ones that we should be looking out for? Because there's so much news going on right now. Everybody knows the social media, right? And I was just preparing myself. But when I opened it up, I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected. And we talked about that before we went live, Marklyn, about how you should write a book, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people writing books that sound so politically over. I don't know what even the word to look for.
And that's the problem in a nutshell. So the book is right there. I'm not going to grab it yet, but it's the reason why we are where we are in this world today is because everything is said in a political bubble method. If this is who you are, this is the way you see the world based on your political ideology, and people act like their perspective based on their political ideology is the only reality. And as a Black man, an educated Black man that grew up in a white town, I used to be one of the good Black guys. Now, when somebody says, what do you mean the good Black people? For a lot of white people, even white people who claim they're not racist, the good Black guy or the good Black woman is the person that never brings up race. They never discuss it. They never, shed light to it. They basically look past it and look for other excuses. We use a term called the house N-word. That's what we used to call the slaves that worked in the house. They didn't think that it was that bad because they were clothed. They were wearing good clothes. They weren't eating the slops. They were eating the good food that the owner left for them. So if you want to be considered one of the good ones, you don't discuss your experience of racism, of subtle, microaggressions. You don't discuss how Black people in general experience this world. You don't discuss how Black people get the worst loans. You don't discuss redlining. You don't discuss these things because these things make people uncomfortable, and you don't want to even, and the thing about it is the word racism makes people uncomfortable, but when you talk about the root of it, it makes even the borderline racist, meaning they don't consider themselves racist. They're not burning crosses. They're not yelling the N-word. They're not saying, get out of my town. But it makes them nervous because they're scared to hear, am I guilty of any of these actions? And one of the things I pull on is I've been outspoken in my town about racism, and it was more so from the experience. And I recall a couple of months ago, I shared a post about let's celebrate a Black individual in our town that got a good position. And what I said to the person was I said, well, there's some people that were objecting to it based off of his skin color. And then I saw so many people say that's not true. He's so loved. Nobody would say that. And my response to them was, so you weren't there, so it didn't happen. That's what closet racist people do. They live this level of, well, if I don't see it, it didn't happen. The racism has to be them and what they perceive as racism. And that's not racism. You're not black. Like, you're a woman. Imagine me telling you your life of being a woman, of being a grandmother, of being a mother, right? And that's it in a nutshell. And it's so hard because the politicians and the assholes that are out there, excuse my French, they so want to tell you that your version of this world and your opinion based off of your political ideology is the reality for everyone.
Well, and one thing that I got when I read the book, Marklyn, is, and I say this all the time when I come on Tea Time, if you don't live it and you're not living in those shoes, don't speak on it. Don't say I understand when you haven't experienced it. And when I was reading through the book, this is what I was experiencing, Marklyn, was I don't know how you feel. I don't know what you went through, but I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to get educated by listening and by reading and by getting the information and getting the correct information. And what I really liked about the book was there's a lot of good information in that book. It's not just talking out of your ass. It's really good information. There's a lot of good links to go to. And what I really liked about the book, Marklyn, is the reflection part. Even in one point in the middle of the book, I think you say, take 10 minutes. And you even ask the reader, did you take the 10 minutes? That's powerful because a lot of people will just skim through a book, right? They'll just read the book and then they'll be like, yeah, I took my 10 minutes. I literally took the 10 minutes. Maybe I took 15. I was just like, whoa, there's a lot to process here. There's a lot of white supremacist stuff that, that we take for granted, that, that white privilege that we take for granted. And I got that from the book, Marklyn. I got that.
The reality of what I shared in this book is not to shame white people, because that's not the point. And I say it, I don't know how many times in a book. I'm not telling you to feel ashamed. And that's when you bring up the subject of race, that is the biggest problem. Unfortunately, I hate to say white people because, that's what you're talking about. And because people always want to equate, well, black people are racist too. The point of what we're saying is understanding the experience of a black person in this country. Yep. But by using the experience of a black person in this country, imagine how an Asian person, a Chinese person, an Indian person, a person from another country, imagine how they feel when they come here and they feel to be otherized versus one of. And, one of the things I mentioned in the book is how some people want to hate black people worse than the white people that are already here, because it's like, hey, you might not like me, but we both don't like them. And I don't like them more than you don't like them. So you really should be bonding with me because we both have the same common enemy, which is bullshit on its face. By discussing the racism in general, what we do is we start to experience and discuss our stereotypes. We start to understand where we think of things. For instance, this new thing about DEI, didn't earn it. They keep acting like they're taking some crackhead off the street and giving them a job. For years, if you guys remember back in the 80s and to the mid 90s, we used to hear about all these guys whose credentials were bullshit. Right? But we didn't find out until something bad happened, and then it was, oh, he didn't have the credentials. She didn't have the credentials. Right? But if you're black, all your credentials are checked and verified and triple verified and 25 times verified, because there's this mentality that Black people are not as smart or as worthy of these said positions. And just to give you guys that are listening a little bit perspective, when Donald Trump was elected, do you realize there was actually a drop in hiring Black men in executive positions? Take away the word men. There was a drop, a 16% drop in hiring Black people in executive management positions. Blacks make up less than 1% of CEOs in Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. We are getting our degrees. We are getting our masters. We are getting our extensive graduate degrees. We're getting our doctorates. We are entrepreneurs. But yet and still, we make up a very negative, small percentage of those people who are influential. And it's something people don't want to discuss. It's kind of crazy.
And you have this chart in the book as well for media and all of that, how media is released on Black people. I found really interesting as well. There's a lot of good information. I highly recommend everyone go out and grab a book, because this book really opened my eyes to see that it's not about black and whites. It's about racism and really understanding the education of racism. And it's not just the word racism. We're talking about lives. We're talking about events that happened for centuries. I love the history that you put in this book, Marklyn, because you went back to 1710, I believe. And there's a story about a woman yelling rape and blaming the Black man when it was a white man. Like, these are the things that people are still doing today in society.
A lot of people don't understand the myth of the Black sexual paralysis, of the hypersexuality of Black men being out there and wanting to rape white women has long been out there. And please forgive me if I forget, in the movie Native Son, I believe, when it was put out there, the movie was put out about how Black men were on the prowl and looking to rape white women. And that's why they needed the KKK. This movie was welcomed and heralded by, I believe, President Woodrow Wilson at the time. He played the movie in the White House. This is one of the peak periods when the KKK was huge. They were marching down, where we have the inauguration. They were walking down that street in hoods and in robes. They were holding positions of authority in Congress, in the Senate, everywhere, the House of Representatives. It was okay. And people today say, oh, well, that was years ago. That's not today. Bullshit. These people were raising kids. They were raising grandkids. Racism is like a precious heirloom. You know that precious heirloom, that locket that your grandmother left you, and you hold on to it and you shine it up every time you need to, because you want people to know this is what your parents left you. This is what your grandmother left you. That for a lot of people, racism is a legacy. My dad was hated people, so I'm going to hate people. They just find different ways of saying it. And one of the things that we don't discuss about racism is how the Black male voice is one of the most hated voices ever. And people say it's not true, but think about every Black person that talks about racism and how people besmirch who they are character-wise. Donald Trump goes on national TV and says some of the most disgusting things. Imagine if he was imagine if Obama was saying the things that Trump did. Imagine if Obama was divorced 2 times. Imagine if Obama was bankrupt 6 times. Imagine if Obama was on tape saying, grab him by the P word. Imagine if Obama was guilty of paying hush money, which between me and you, I think this case against him right now is bullshit. I'm going to be honest with you. He paid a hooker hush money. He's a rich, powerful guy. What did you think he was going to do? Right? It's a bullshit case on its face. But think about all this. And if you're a racist watching this, if Obama was Trump and had the same resume, be honest, would you vote for Obama? And if you tell yourself you would, if he was saying make America great again, you're lying to yourself because you don't want to appear to be racist. But you know, if Obama and Trump were to switch roles, you wouldn't even Obama would have been laughed off being elected. He wouldn't have made it past the first primary. They would have laughed him off. But here we have a rich white man who apparently is broke but claims to be raised rich, says the most god-awful things about anyone that's not white. What does he say about immigrants? Why don't we have more people coming from the good countries? Every one of them is white. He's on record saying, who would you rather have, the black president or the white president that got you 1.7 billion off? How about just you're the president that got 1.7 billion off? But he intentionally put in black and white. Why? Because he knows a good amount of his voters are racist as hell. And just because they don't say, I know when a guy's racist. Some black people know a person's racist and they'll shake their hand and they'll be friendly with them. I can't do it. When you say stupid shit to me in a condescending tone, you've told me who you are. Yep. I don't care how many black people shake your hand. You told me who you are by our interaction. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't need to speak. And if it's the thing about being black is we're not allowed to be proud of who we are. We have to be very humble, very, congenial, very like unaggressive, like we got to be very like like our personality can't be very forthright, because who are we to be forthright? Who are we to stand up for what we believe in?
And there's a part in the book, Marklyn, that really stood out to me where you put, I don't think that I'm smarter. I am a smart man. That statement right in there, you know what I mean? It's, why are we telling black people who they should be or how they should be or what level they're going to be? What gave us the right? That's where I got really upset, because the truth was in the book. And you got to really read the book. And I read the PDF file. I ordered the book. That's how much I believe in this book, Marklyn, because you have a lot of good facts in that book that a lot of schools should be having. A lot of students should be reading this book. So let's get into the student schools, because the school systems, I read a lot about the school systems in this book, and I was just like, absolutely.
Well, here's the issue. So schools were built around white supremacy. If people don't want to believe it, they can look at it twice, but they don't. If you look at most of the facts I shared, you'll never find those in school history books. Now, if somebody takes an African-American history book, you might find some of those facts, but I did that intentionally. Is it that black people can't come together as a community and rise? No, it's that every time we come together as a community and rise, we were bombed the hell out, because the white natives that lived locally couldn't accept the fact that a black community was taking care of itself and didn't need them and was doing better than them. That's how crazy it is. Just because we were living and thriving and being successful, there are cities that are underwater because the government wanted to get rid of the evidence. So they would flood entire towns after they burned them down. Why? How many of the stories are about a black man supposedly raped a white woman? So guess what? Burn everyone. Let's not just kill the one black guy that we think did it. Let's kill all the black people and set an example. So why do you think black people fear the police? Even to this day, even if they've got all their paperwork together. Why? Because the historical impact, which comes to racial trauma, which is passed down from generation to generation. I grew up in a household, I'm 51 years old. I grew up in a household where my dad was born in the segregated South in 1933. My mother was born in segregated South in 1938. Now, did they have crosses burned? No. But my dad had stories of being called the N-word. My dad had stories about understanding that he had to act different around certain people. I wish I could actually, not let people sway me with their energy, but I'm such a genuine person. What you see with me is what you get. I love with everything. I don't like people think I hate white people. I'm like, I love everyone and hate everyone at the same time. I don't hate anyone. I don't like a lot of people because I can get easily annoyed, but I just want everyone to get along. But the way we're going to get along is when we start respecting each other's story, each other's experience.
And the experience has to come from the person who experienced it. Stop talking about stories that you haven't lived. I say it all the time. Stop sharing a story you never lived, that you never experienced, because all you're doing is doing more damage. It would be like me writing this book as a white woman writing about black people. Like, I'm not a black person. I can't write the story. I learned so much history in this book that I was blown away, and I was frustrated to know as a white person that this was allowed. The justice system, I already think the justice system is already screwed up as a white person, let alone a black person experiencing it. You have an experience, you have an exercise, a part in the book, Markham, where you write about the kids, the white kids and the black kids demolishing the car. The white kids got one phone call to the police station, and the black kids got 10 calls. Like, seriously, people.
We're
like,
sleeping in their car. They were sleeping in a car. So, okay, let's go back up real quick because I really want people to get a fathom of understanding. In this episode of What Would You Do? They took two different sets of kids, one white, one black. The white kids, they were all actors. The white kids who were doing all the damage, people would stop, but not a lot of people call the police, right? But people, hey, are you okay? Should you be doing this? Hey, guy. But they wasn't calling the police. Strange thing happened. The police had 10 phone calls about black kids sleeping in a car. Kids didn't do shit. They were in a car. Miss Liz, I apologize if I'm swearing too much, but I speak with passion. So please forgive me.
No. And this is what I said when we came on this tea time, this special tea time. I didn't even read the book until today, and I was like, I need to read this book because I promised Marklyn I would read this book. So when I got up this morning, I was like, okay, and I was preparing myself to have a book of a list of good people and bad people. And when I opened it, I was like, whoa. I need to really take time to read this book. And that's what I did is I took the time. I shut everything off and I took the time to read the book. And I ordered the book because I want to be able to read it again to understand it a little clearer and take the time to process a little bit more. But just the overall of 5 hours of reading today, I was blown away by the things that were in this book. And when I mean blown away, I was blown away in a good way and I was blown away in a sad way. The book gave me a lot of information. It gave me a lot of real facts and links that you can check out for yourself. Marklyn is not talking out of his ass. He's giving you links. He's giving you charts. The information is there. Check it for yourself if you don't believe it. That's what I liked about this book.
I didn't want people to read it and be like scholar, like I said before. I wanted people to read it and be like, yo. So this is, when you go do research, I wanted people to read it like when you do research and then you find something else and then you find something else and you're like, oh, but what about this? But what about this? Hey, what about this? I wanted people to feel as if they were just doing research and this was a piece of it. But I wanted it to be able to say, hey, I can actually go to information and find it. So it's not him just speaking from his opinion. He's telling you his thoughts, and now he's showing you the factual information that says, oh, so this is how, if, for existence, when you were talking earlier about the white women crying in 2 seconds, how white women have been trained that their tears will bring about sympathy or empathy in a matter of seconds. They've been trained that way. Why? Because they show it on TV. They show it on TV. And the thing is, we are all receptive based on what we see. If you're a white woman and you're watching TV and you see, if I make up a lie that I was attacked, I just say it was a black guy. Why? Because people have it already embedded in their brains that that's what black guys do. You know, I go on threads all the time around, Fox, CNN, and this is something that people don't even understand. They over-report black crime and under-report white crime. White people commit crime the same. Less than 1% of the black community commits crime. Less than 1% of the white community commits crime. But what's the myth that they put out? 50%, well, 13%. This is what they use to blur the line. 13% of the population, which is black people at 13%, commit 50% of the crime. When you say that, you make it seem like every black person is out there committing a crime, which is impossible. If you do the numbers, less than 1% of the black community commits a crime. Less than 1% of the white community commits crime. But for some reason, when a black person commits a crime, that person represents all black people. But not one white person wants to say a white criminal represents them. Tell me how weird that is.
Right? And how transparent is that?
But people will fight it.
And that's the thing, right? The society, the systems, the programming, the media is portraying black people to be these bad people, right? These gangsters, these ones that don't want to work. In the book, you did an example where you had done 2 resumes with the name Marklyn and then Mark. And I was like, I already know which one got hired. Like, I was just like, it's ignorance. That's what it is. It's really ignorance. And I
like
don't understand how we can't open the eyes.
I like that you said that, because the amazing thing about it for me is how people are so set on denying it. You know what I mean? Like, you are so set on denying how people experience this world, that when someone's telling you this is what they're experiencing, your brain just shuts down.
Yep.
I don't want to know that you're experiencing it this way. I don't want to know that you're being honest and that maybe I'm blind to the truth. Nobody wants to admit that they're blind to what's going on.
Well, there's a lot of people wearing blind shades over their eyes because everybody says, I want change. I want to talk about the word diversity, because this really infuriates me. As a white person, it infuriates me. We talk about diversity. We talk about bringing people together, but we're actually dividing each other with this diversity, because it's this culture is better than this culture. This color is better than this color. We're putting each other in different boxes instead of coming together. We're looking at it as a threat, and it's not a threat. It's meant to bring people together. And you talk about that in the book as well, Marklyn, about diversity.
people, if you're part of the American melting pot, there's not one damn thing you're doing that is not influenced by a different culture. You know what I mean? And the problem that we have with that is that people act like the American culture is what it is by itself. You know, if you like hot dogs, you didn't get that from America. You got that from Germany, which it's really not German. It's a hot dog is based off the premise of a sausage. It's just different meats on the inside, but it's off a sausage. Go look up the roots of what a sausage is. You love spaghetti. Go look up the roots of what spaghetti is. You know, there was a post on TikTok the other day about a white woman who said she was upset about Beyonce and said black people can't be country. Black people are not country. And she said, you might be picking, but you weren't picking. Your grandparents were picking, right?
Yeah.
Not understanding that most of the country music came from the banjo, which was created by black Africans when they came here. The instruments that Africans created, the blues and all this stuff that, you know, we sang. You know, you love our culture, but you hate us. And it's a sad thing because when you talk about it, people, oh, no, I what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. You know exactly what I mean. You love our culture, but you hate us. Well, maybe you should just stop talking about, you know, being black. And it's, you know, one thing that will always piss me off is how me talking about racism makes me an angry black man. Why can't I be angry? You get to be angry because you don't think this country's yours anymore. Why can't I be angry? Because I see an injustice. Why can't I be angry? Because I see that I got to work 20 times as hard to do the same thing. Now, am I angry? You know what I'm angry about? I'm angry that it's hard for me to find a job. I'm angry that I'm not financially stable because of choices I made. Yeah, I'm angry because I don't have a girlfriend, and every now and then I'd like to have a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like that's not anger. That could be upset. But the reality is angry. I don't walk around angry. I walk around upset and bothered that why are we hating people for arbitrary things that shouldn't matter? I don't dislike somebody because they're white or Asian. I dislike somebody because they don't like me. And I've gotten to the point that I know people don't like me because I'm an outspoken black male. And a lot of people don't like outspoken black men. They don't, just like they don't like outspoken women. How dare you as a woman ever speak up? It's a sad reality.
Well, and you mentioned in the book Candace Owens.
Candace Owens, yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit because a lot of people, that's one thing in the book you're saying, I don't care what color you are. I'm going to call you out if you're a shady person. Like, that's just who I am. And that's what you mentioned in your book a lot. So let's talk about Candace Owens.
So here's the thing with Candace Owens. Candace Owens is what we call a grifter. A grifter basically just sees an opportunity to make money, right? If you're an outspoken black individual, you want to make money, you got to ride the coattails of the Republican Party. You know why? Because the Republican Party as a whole, you know, Lyndon Baines Johnson said a very poignant thing years ago. If you can convince the lowest white man, the lowest, poorest white man, that he's better than any black man, you can pick his pockets for days. Right? So what did Donald Trump do? He came out and convinced the poorest white people that this country and this world is not theirs anymore. There was a guy in a video that said he believed that if they had to get down in the trenches, Obama wouldn't get in the trenches with them, but Trump would.
Wow.
Trump, who shits on a 14,000 carat toilet bowl. He believes Donald Trump would get his hands dirty with it. Why? Because Donald Trump spoke his level of hate that he could relate to. So much so he excused it. If you listen to his exact words when he first announced he was running for president in 2016, Mexican is not sending its best people. It's sending their thieves, right? He didn't say some of them. Listen to the words. People love to use the, like, oh, what he meant. Not what he meant. Let's go by what he said, because that's what you do to us when we say things. You hold us accountable for these words. And if I say I meant, the first words they go back to is, no, but this is what you said. Look, it's right here. He said Mexico is not sending its finest people. It's sending its drug dealers. It's sending its rapists. It's sending its worst people. He even said recently that they're emptying their mental institutions and sending them forward. Donald Trump doesn't give two shits as long as he can make you think the worst of people of color are crossing that border. People talk about fentanyl coming in from Mexico. No, most fentanyl's coming in from China. People don't talk about the drugs that are being flown in because people are worried about the border. Most of those people coming from the border are very good people looking to change their lives, because of the American dream. Because in America, if you dream it, you can do it. And for some, I don't believe that the American dream is not achievable, black, white, or whatever. But if you're white, you don't have as many hurdles as people of color. And the fact that you believe that me talking about those hurdles make me trying to be a victim speaks volumes about who you are. If you're starting off without those hurdles, like if we talk about generational wealth, if your great grandfather knew the philosophy of owning, and he wasn't a poor sharecropper who was getting fucked, excuse the expression, by the white people who were making sure that no matter what. So in this, you've heard of the movie Roots, right? In the movie Roots, they always do Roots something the later years or something like that. And there's this important scene where the white landowner says, are you really going to let these, niggers, get along? Let them achieve things, let them be sharecroppers? And he said, no. What we're going to do is loan them the money to work the property. Loan them the money to get the seeds, to get the property. And no matter what, they'll never have enough money to pay those loans back. Right? Yep. Now, where do we see this today? Go look up Wells Fargo. Go look up Bank of America. Go look up all these banks that are being caught giving bad loans to black people. This is all verifiable. You could go look it up. They give black people worse loans, higher interest loans. And the reason why people like Donald Trump and other racists are mad is because the internet has allowed this information to be abundant to everyone to find it. And if you ever notice, when they find out that these banks are doing bad business by people of black people or Spanish people or whatever, the case gets settled quickly and it gets pushed underneath the rug. You don't hear about it long term because they don't want you to know, like, oh, we got caught with our hand in the cookie jar doing some bad shit. They don't want you to know that.
Well, and that's the thing, right, Marklyn? The internet is there. The research is there. The evidence is there.
Yes.
People are just lazy. They just are not looking. They're not educating themselves.
There's a hate of
with this
information.
book, exactly. And then they're like, well, I didn't know, because you chose not to know. You chose not to go and look and do the research. They stop blaming society when you're not doing the work. You know, and that's what I really liked about this book, Mark, is the work is there. The research is there. Click the damn link in the book. Like, the information is there, you know. But again, I want to go back to the reflections, because the reflections is what really opened my eyes. Because the questions that you're asking, you're telling people to take the time to reflect on what they're reading. We're not doing that in today's society. We're just saying read, 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 read. But we're not saying reflect on what you're reading and what you're taking in. And that was the best part that I liked about the book, is the reflection parts, because you have it on each of the chapters. As you're closing the chapters, you're doing reflection time. And again, that 10 minutes. Did you really take that 10 minutes? And you know, when you grab this copy in this book and you read it, take that damn 10 minutes. What is 10 minutes? We waste 10 minutes all the time. You know, going to get a coffee at Starbucks or Tim Hortons, you're wasting 10 minutes in the wait up line waiting to make your order. You can take 10 minutes for this book.
And
10 minutes reflect.
Here's the thing. My book is not the end all be all of all answers. It gives you a small scope of what we've got going on. It gives you a small scope of the experience. It gives you a small scope to say, hey, maybe I've got a taste of what happened. Maybe. But I think people need to be a little bit more honest about, truthfully, where they stand and be willing to have a conversation. If you're not willing to have a conversation, that's cool, but be honest about the fact that you don't want to have that conversation. That's what it comes down to. You got to be honest and say, yeah, I don't want to have the conversation. Because the second you're honest about it, then at least people know where you're operating from. You know, that's the important part. Uh-oh, there's Lady Rose. I know who that is. That's Lady Rose.
So, Marklyn, if you want to hold the book up so people can see the book, we're almost at the hour here. I want to get the book up. If people can, where they can purchase it, all that good stuff. And if they'd like to reach out to you, have you as a guest, all that good stuff, we'll get that out there.
Lady Rose, this is the new book. I Like Black People, The Good Ones, An Observation from Experience. It is the third book. I will send you a link because she used to be on my podcast with me when I first started. Lady Rose used to be on my, and she's such a sweet lady. And I knew her niece, who unfortunately passed away. Her niece and I became good friends later on, and we became good friends. And then her dad was on the podcast and she was on the podcast, and it just became a very, like almost like a family thing. And we would talk, and she's such a good person. And I really appreciate the fact that she tuned into this. But yes, so that was the third book, I Like Black People, An Observation from Experience. I Like Black People, The Good Ones, An Observation from Experience. And it just goes along with, I think people need to have honest conversations around the word racism. They do.
I strongly agree with that one. We need to have these conversations. And, and again, the information is there in the book. Again, Marklyn, thank you for sharing the book with me and giving me a chance to read it before today's interview, because I would have came and I would have said, okay, well, tell me about the book. How did the cover get made? Da, 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 da. There's a lot of podcasters out there that don't do their homework, but this girl, she gets her homework sent to her, and I do it. And, I want to read the book again, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to read a second time, because I want to take it in. I want to reflect on it.
Thank you.
And I'm not just saying that because Marklyn's my guest. I'm saying that because this book is really, really an eye-opening. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things.
I think if you really, really care about the conversation around racism, I think if you really, really want to see a change, my book can offer a glimpse of reality of it. The reflection questions are meant because if you just read it and you just go to the next chapter, you're not taking in the information that was there that previous chapter. So by putting these reflection questions in, they're like, hey, time out. Now let's think about the stuff that you just read and really put some thought into it. That's what's important. Thinking about it. It's easy to sit in a room and hear, okay, I have stereotypes that I think. Okay, cool. But what if you actually think about why you think those stereotypes? And what purpose did those stereotypes serve you to think that way? Because when you realize that your stereotype serves you no purpose, maybe you'll be a little bit better.
Well, and I think, reading this book gives people that time to really look and see if they can change themselves. As a grandma, like I said before the show started, I'm a grandma of a Black young man. And as I was reading this, I was like, my grandson is struggling with this, and I would never know what he's going through because I'm white. And it's not about Black and whites. It's the ignorance that's there, the blindness that's there. Again, Marklyn, thank you for letting me read the book because it really opened my eyes to things that I was, oh, well, it ain't that hard for you guys. Like, sometimes, you say things and then you're like, oh, shoot, can't be saying that because I never lived it. Sometimes you just got to zip the mouth because and reflect and really take a look.
What's important to me when God calls me home is that I left an impact on somebody. Lady Rose, we'll talk about that later. You should never say that I will say this, and I'm not saying this to chastise you. You should never say you're colorblind, because the reality is we all see people's colors. We do. You were raised to treat everyone respectfully. But if you don't see, when we say I'm colorblind, you're basically saying you don't see that person for who they are, because the world is not colorblind. Again, I was the acceptable Black guy. I was one of the good ones until I started talking about racism. And then all of a sudden I became the troublesome Black guy. Oh, you're just looking to cause problems. You're just looking to just cause problems. And it's like, yeah, am I? Or maybe I'm sharing a reality that you're not comfortable with hearing about. And I'm not saying it about Lady Rose, because I think Lady Rose is beautiful. She is an amazing woman. I'm saying the overall sentiment sometimes of when you hear that is that you're not hearing how a person experiences this world. And instead, stop focusing about that and move on. And it's not about focusing in on that. It's knowing I'm being treated differently simply because you see me differently. I have a superpower that a lot of people don't have. I can walk into the room and I can change the dynamic by never opening my mouth. That is a superpower that a lot of people don't know.
So, Marklyn, what final words do you have for everybody tonight? And how can they reach you?
First of all, you can find me on marklynspeaks.com. She's got it right there, marklynspeaks.com. I'm available for conferences, for book signings, stuff of that nature. Second of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate the time to dialogue with you and share my story and share about the book. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for buying it, because that's what I love, is that people are buying it and people are seeing. Go check the reviews. Go check it out. But this is what I want you to do. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Invite somebody over and have the uncomfortable conversation. Be ready to say, damn, I got it wrong. That's where the growth starts. That's where we start growing.
And it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to learn.
Every day, all day.
Well, thank you so much, Marklyn, and thank you for tuning in. And to all the viewers and listeners, thank you for supporting tonight. I really appreciate all of you guys. I could not do this without all of you. We'll be back Thursday at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And on Thursday, we'll be talking about Parkinson's disease. And we're going to have returning guests again in the evening, the Eggman series. They'll be back with 2 new books that they have out as well. So join us for that on Thursday. And again, thank you all. And if of this year of 2024.